Question number 6, Deputy Tommy Broughan, 30 seconds.
Lascan. And yesterday, as you know, while your colleague there was beside you took the debate, I know you couldn't be here, on the Firearms and Offensive Weapons Amendment Bill. I did raise again, Minister, the upsurge of appalling crime that we had in parts of my constituency earlier this year with murders in broad daylight, etc., and what steps were being taken. And secondly, the great anxiety that people feel now in the run into the Halloween festival, that people will use the festival as an excuse to create general antisocial behaviour and mayhem in estates.
That working with communities to tackle public disorder and reduce antisocial behaviour is a key priority for An Garda Síochána. This approach includes a strong focus on quality of life issues and collaboration with local authorities to help address the causes of antisocial behaviour in communities. Indeed, specifically in relation to the forthcoming period of Hallow'een, I am advised that the Gardaí will put in place measures in every division, but particularly in the Dublin Metropolitan Region and border divisions, to prevent and detect the sale and organised importation of fireworks in the lead-up to Hallow'een through a specifically designed Operation Tombola. This operation focuses on the prevention of associated public disorder and antisocial behaviour through the incremental deployment of resources, including public order unit personnel, to augment local plans where required. It should also be noted that a range of strong legislative provisions are available to the Gardaí to combat antisocial behaviour, including the 1991 Criminal Damage Act, the 1994 Criminal Justice Public Order Act, the 2003 Criminal Justice Public Order Act and the Intoxicating Liquor Code, in particular Acts of 03 and 08. Can I say to Deputy Broughan that the report on the Commission of Future Policing placed a particular emphasis on the importance of community policing, in which frontline Gardaí are visible and engaged in communities, and develop partnerships with other public agencies and services in order to deliver a multi-agency approach to community safety. The new Garda operating model and revised divisional structure announced recently by the Garda Commissioner meets a key priority in that regard. The 4-year implementation plan will give effect to the recommendations of the Commission of Future Policing. In line with the ethos of community policing, the new model will provide more visible Gardaí on the front line, will devolve more power and decision-making from Garda headquarters in Phoenix Park to chief superintendents leading divisions across the country. That will ensure a more localised, a more community, a more responsive police service, which will, of course, reflect local needs and the needs of Deputy Broughan's constituents, because Garda visibility is a key element in tackling antisocial behaviour, and in this context I would point to the growing numbers joining on Garda organisation and ongoing recruitment in that regard.
Well, obviously, Minister, we're very grateful for Operation Tombola and for the work of An Garda Síochána, our two local authorities, Dublin City and Fingal, and indeed of all the local community groups and volunteers who try so hard at this period to make the festival of Halloween safe and enjoyable. And obviously, there's a special responsibility on business to ensure that materials like pallets and tyres and so on don't end up in the wrong hands. But you've listed off there the legislation available to An Garda Síochána. But I noticed you told me before the summer that there are no Garda members in the Dublin DMR North, in our North Division, assigned to full-time public order duties. You told me, I think, that DMR North received 10 new inspectors and 20 sergeants, but there does seem to be a major gap in that area. As well, you told me, I think, that there was 15.3 million allocated for the youth diversion projects in 2019, and that you told me again about the 106 schemes. I think you have an action research project at the University of Limerick, and again we're wondering if the experience of that project comes down to our area on Dublin's north side. And I noticed finally about behavioural warnings issued to children for the period 2007 to 2019. There's been almost no activity in that regard in that area, Minister. There used to be, say, about a decade ago, but that seems to have almost lapsed at this stage in order to address problems with children in this area.
I had the opportunity of visiting the Minister's constituency a few months back, and I wish to assure him of the full support of my department, but also other departments, in the context of ensuring that there is a community response to the issues involved. and I was pleased to engage in a form of collaboration with other ministerial colleagues, and I refer to the contribution of Deputy Broughan in that regard as local public representative, and my colleague Minister Broughan and Minister Finnegan McGrath and others, because community policing remains very much at the heart of the Garda Síochána. It provides a means of recognising that every community, including those in the Deputy's constituency, has its own concerns and expectations, and Gardaí have a role to play in community policing. As I've said, in practical terms, the new model that we're seeing now being rolled out will mean less duplication. It will mean less bureaucracy at senior level. It will mean the chief superintendents will be given greater decision-making power in the area. Because, as I said earlier, policing plan in my constituency, or the constituency of County Corla, is much different than in the deputies. And this is what we need to get from this new plan, and I'm confident that we will.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Broughan.
The reality is, though, that sometimes very disappointing. I mean, we all walk around and visit all areas of our constituency constantly, and I was very disappointed last Friday, for example, visiting an area of the constituency on an amenity open space which Dublin City Council tries to look after, to see in the very middle of it a burnt-out vehicle and other evidence of debris and mayhem that had taken place on the night before, and that's within 5 weeks of Halloween. So clearly there are issues here in that regard. As you know, there's a long-standing demand that we would have a new divisional Garda headquarters in the burgeoning North Fringe. I might be referencing that later in the day in another debate, where you have a massive population of maybe 25, 30 to 50,000 people, but no Garda station. And I think that's something. I know it's the Commissioner's call, but that's something we have to address. And I think the Q1 figures were disappointing, Minister, as well. The crime figures we heard recently, with an increase in attempts, threats to murder, assaults, harassments, related offences, sexual offences, damage to property and so on. They're still disturbing increases in that area, and our journalist colleague Conor Lally has drawn attention to the fact of this series of assaults that's been taking place across the city and indeed in other parts of the country on a sort of wanton basis, leaving people seriously injured.
Minister to respond. Final response.
He raises a number of issues here. One relates to an issue that he raised with me in the past on the matter of Garda station for the Clongriffin-Coolock area. I'm advised that Garda Síochána has had preliminary discussions with Dublin City Council in relation to the possible provision of a site for the development of new facilities in North Dublin. My department has been informed by Garda management that the question of developing a Garda station in the Clongriffin area will be the subject of further consideration, and I'm sure it's an issue that we can come back to as matters develop. Another issue that has been raised with me by Deputy Broughan in the past, and that is tackling antisocial behaviour on our rail network. In that regard, I want to acknowledge the setting up of Operation Twin Track at the Garda Síochána, involved in a new community engagement and rail safety initiative. It involves Gardaí travelling on the Dart, on the Luas, on commuter rail services in the Greater Dublin area, and in particular in the Deputy's constituency, ensuring that there is a Garda presence from time to time at the major and busy train stations around the city. I welcome that, and it's one that I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to further engage in, and I would hope, County Corla, that we continue the Garda recruitment drive into next year, following the budget of next week.
Thank you, Minister. Next question.